Hello and welcome to episode 2 of LUFCFANZONE podcast. I'm Sam Isles.
And I'm Jack Ellis.
And each episode we'll be talking to an ex-Leeds United player or manager about their time at the club. Our guest will be chosen by you, our followers and listeners, who get the chance to choose our upcoming guest by voting in a poll on our LUFCFANZONE Instagram story.
This week's poll showed that 65% of you wanted a head coach appointed by Massimo Cellino instead of a head coach appointed by Ken Bates. All our episodes can be found on LUFCFANZONE YouTube channel as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you haven't watched the last episode with Saul Bamber, I'd recommend watching it. This week we're with a man who was head coach of Leeds United on 4 separate occasions, however was only in charge for a total of 42 matches.
Today we're joined by former head coach Neil Redfearn. Thanks for joining us, Neil.
Thank you.
The news came out that you've recently become a granddad, Neil. I'd like to start off by saying congratulations.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, it's obviously my daughter Amy. She's given birth to a little girl, which is fantastic. You know, and it's I'm really looking forward to the time when I can go into Exeter and go and see her. It's like anything else. It's a fantastic achievement.
It's a strange time, isn't it, to turn a granddad, because I bet you'd be wanting to see her more than ever.
But absolutely, yeah. I mean, you want to be there, really, but like anybody else, you've got to abide by the rules. And like you say, it's strange times, and particularly for a young mum giving birth to a baby, it is strange times. So it's important that we abide by the rules. But I'm sure I'll get a chance to see her sometime.
Absolutely. So we'll start at the beginning of your career, if that's all right, and kind of work his way into the present. So you were born in Dewsbury. Did that mean you supported Leeds when you were younger?
Yeah, I did as a young lad. Yeah, I mean, I born in Dewsbury Batley Hospital. I lived at a place called Birkenshaw, which is not far from Driglington, which is just outside Leeds, between Leeds and Bradford. And ever since I was a kid, my dad took me every chance he could to watch that great Don Revie side. My dad, he played professional football 15 years, and I think he saw it as part of an education, to take me down and watch, which was probably the best side in the country at the time. I just became hooked, on Leeds United, and people like Alan Clark and Billy Bremner, and Don Revie's side was unbelievable at that time.
Yeah, and although Leeds fans will obviously remember you for being the head coach at Leeds and the academy, before you made yourself as a head coach, you made over 1,000 appearances as a player and 790 of them in the Football League, which made you the 5th highest appearance maker in the Football League of all time. How would you describe yourself as a player?
As a player, all action, I would say. Probably, box-to-box midfield player. I love getting in around the goal, and I was a goal-scoring midfield player. Scored a lot of goals in my time, particularly at clubs like Barnsley and Oldham. Just love playing. Just love playing, and I've said it before that although I'm fortunate to play all those games, because it's an honour to be a professional footballer. But if I wasn't deemed as good enough, if you like, I think I'd have played that long anyway. I played locally, and because I just love playing, I love the game.
Yeah, so you began your career at Nottingham Forest, where you played in the youth teams. However, is it true that Brian Clough, who was the first team manager at the time, prevented you from making a switch to Leeds?
Well, what happened when I was at Forest? I'd left school sort of a little bit early to sort of take up my apprenticeship role down at the club, and probably in hindsight it was too early, and I got a little bit homesick, and I sort of stuck it as long as I could, but in the end it became too much. So the club allowed me to go and train with 2 or 3 clubs up north near my home, and Bolton Wanderers was one of the sides that was really keen from before I went to Notts Forest. Leeds United was another side, Bradford City, and I was allowed to train at all 3 clubs, and obviously all 3 clubs showed an interest. But I think such was Clough's dislike of Leeds. He didn't want me to go to Leeds for some reason. Alan Clark was manager at the time, and obviously it just never happened in the end. But and I ended up going to Bolton Wanderers. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't think Cloughie wanted me to go to Leeds.
Yeah, and then like you said, from Forest, you later joined Bolton, and then on to
Yeah.
Lincoln in
Yeah.
1984, where you've actually played in that horrific match at Valley Parade, didn't you? Where the 56 supporters tragically lost their life in the Bradford Stadium fire.
Yeah.
What can you remember about that game? Because it must have been absolutely horrific.
It was. I mean, the game in itself should have been a celebration, really, for Bradford City. I mean, I was playing for Lincoln, obviously, at the time, and you know, we were fighting for points to stay up. But they'd awarded Bradford City the trophy, the old third division trophy, which is obviously the first division now. And the kick-off was delayed a little bit. They were going to do a lap of honour with the trophy, and it was a packed house. You know, it was absolutely full and bouncing Valley Parade. And you know, we sort of I think we kicked off at 3:05 because of the presentation, and you know, they did a lap of honour with the trophy, the Bradford City team, and then we kicked off, and it was just a surreal experience really. After that, I think we've been playing maybe 5-10 minutes, not long, and there was just wisps of smoke coming from from the main stand, and obviously what had happened, it was a dry spring day, and you know, there was a breeze, and he's obviously caught fire at the stand, and it was just terrific, really.
Yeah, it must have been absolutely terrible. But then from Lincoln as well as your career, you moved on and you played in the Premier League for a couple of clubs, including Charlton, who bought you for £1 million. But it was at Barnsley, wasn't it, where you became a club legend and made over 200 appearances. How did you find your time at Barnsley?
I loved my time at Barnsley. Lovely people, great people. And obviously when I initially signed at Barnsley, you know, things weren't too good. They were near the bottom of the league, and we'd not got many points. And but I was there 7 years, nearly 8 years at Barnsley, and obviously I saw the progression from them being a struggling championship side, if you like, to a side that got promoted out of that level. And you know, some of the football that we played the season we got promoted was unbelievable. I've not seen better football at this level. Leeds play good football, but I've not seen better football than that Barnsley side played at that level. But yeah, I mean, it was just a really exciting time. You know, it was a revival, if you like, of the club, and you know, we had some fantastic players. You know, we had packed houses every week that promotion year. Very similar to what's happening with Leeds now at the moment in time, and they're just really good seasons. You know, great seasons to remember.
Yeah, and in total, you played for 20 clubs in your 26-year career,
Yeah,
ranging from the Premier League, from like Charlton, like we said, but also all the way down to Bradford Park Avenue in the Northern First Division, which was where you played your 1,000th match. But why do you think you settled so well in at Barnsley? Because you spent so many years there, but no other club you spent longer than 2 years at.
yeah, that's right. I think when I was sort of maybe early 20s, mid 20s, I was a little bit of an hothead, if you like. You know, if I wanted to be playing, you know, and the sort of money side of things didn't sort of bother me that much. What was more important to me is that I played every week, and that I enjoyed playing, and like in football now. I mean, even more so now, it's more of a squad game now. I mean, when I first came onto the scene in the game, you know, you only had one sub, two subs perhaps, but now it's a big squad game, you know, and players get left out, players get played, they get taken off, and it's part and parcel of the game. And but back then, you know, as a young player that wanted to get on and do well, you know, it sort of got in the way at times, you know, striving to get on. And so I think that what happened at Barnsley, I think really I just I found a club where, you know, I enjoyed being in them surroundings. I think at that point in my career, I was probably right at the height of my powers. I'd just come from Oldham Athletic, and we got promoted to the top flight. And I was really instrumental in that season. You know, I scored nearly 20 goals for midfield that year for Oldham, and obviously Barnsley saw that, and so I mean it was just a realization that I'd settled and I was enjoying what I was doing, and I think you know, I think I was being appreciated, and I think that, you know, that's a big thing for a player.
Yeah. So in 2001, despite continuing your playing career for a further 7 years after you took the job, you had your first taste of management at Halifax. where you became caretaker
Yeah, that's
manager?
right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, it was a baptism of fire, really, because absolutely no resources whatsoever. The side was struggling near the foot of the table. I'd signed for a guy called Paul Bracewell, who really top player, played at Everton and played in the top flight, played for England. And obviously, it's on with a dream of coming as a player coach, and he was only there 2 minutes, and I ended up being caretaker manager, and I was still playing, and it's it's an impossible role to actually play and manage at the same time. But as an actual learning curve or a learning cycle, it was a fantastic experience because you've got absolutely no resources. You've got a side that's struggling. You've got to try and fashion results. You've got to try and get young players through. It was just you don't think so at the time, but it was just a really good experience, to be honest with you. If you wanted a crash course in management, that was a perfect scenario, really.
Yeah. So how long before that were you interested in going into management?
Well, I think sort of back towards the back of my playing days at Barnsley, I'd got really interested in coaching. With a top coach at the time, a guy called Eric Winstanley, who was a really good coach, sort of really innovative with his ideas and how football should be played. And he sort of captured my imagination then, and obviously I was sort of getting on a little bit as well. And you start looking towards what you're going to do when you finish playing. But I always vowed to myself, play as long as you can, and and if you're fit enough, play as long as you can. And but obviously, coaching and management's the next best thing to playing, for me. And obviously, it's something that coaching in particular is something that I love doing.
Yeah. So fast forward a few years to 2008, where you joined Leeds' academy from York.
Yeah.
Where you were a caretaker manager at the time. How did the move from York to Leeds come about?
Well, I'd initially been at Boston United before that, and worked with a guy called Neil Thompson, who was a former teammate at Barnsley, who was a really good player. And Tomo was the manager of Boston United. I went there as player coach to help him, and he was academy manager at Leeds when I was at York. And he had a call one night, and would I fancy taking on the under-18s at Leeds? I've been assistant manager to Martin Foyle at York City, but obviously, the lure of going to Leeds United and working at Leeds United, such a big club, iconic club, was just too much. And obviously, to be fair to York City, they were brilliant. They didn't stand in my way. They let me go and progress. And obviously, then the rest is history from there on in.
And then when you did join Leeds, like you said, you joined the academy. So you began coaching the youth players rather than the adults that you'd maybe coached at York and Halifax previously.
Yeah.
Do you think you had to change your managerial and coaching style because the players were younger, or did you stay the same?
I think what you do is you take little bits of everything. I mean, obviously you've got to coach a little bit different, but because it's about development more than winning football matches and entertaining. It's about the development of the players and the individuals and getting teams through and getting players through. So the accent's a little bit different, if you like, towards where you want players to go and what success looks like. It's more about the players rather than the results. So you change your outlook a little bit and you change the way you coach a little bit, but the principles of the game are exactly the same. They're not too different. And I think what I really liked, I mean, Leeds is such a fantastic academy. I mean, it was then, it was before me, and it is after me now. I mean, it's just a fantastic academy setup. And I think that it's a big club, big iconic club, Leeds, and obviously it's a one club town, so it gets the best kids from this area, and it's a real pleasure to work with them, and obviously at that time with some fantastic young players.
Yeah, and then when you'd been in the youth setup for 3 years in Leeds, you became for the first time the caretaker manager in 2012, replacing Simon Grayson.
Yeah.
Can you remember how you were approached to take over Grayson?
Well, it was a big shock actually, because Simon had been really successful. Obviously I was there. I joined the club roughly about the same time as Simon. You know, I came as under-18s coach, and obviously Simon got the job, the manager's job, and he was brilliant for the club. You know, he got the club promotion. They had a good couple of good seasons in the championship, if you like, and it sort of came on the back of a little bit of a dip. So it was a bit of it was a big surprise that that Simon went. And then obviously when they turned to me, I'd obviously been working with the 18s and helping a little bit with the 23s as well, or the reserves, if you like. I think it was the reserves then. We didn't have the EPP, the new academy set up then. And obviously, they turned to me, and they just said, look, can you look after it until we get another manager? And the bottom line is, you're working for the club, and you're trying to do your best for the club, and however long that takes to get the right guy in, then you do it because it's your job.
So before you began coaching the first team properly, how was your relationship with the first team? Did you know them personally from coaching within the youth setup, or were you kind of separate?
No. I mean, obviously, we're having the career that I've had as a player. You, rightly or wrongly, you're sort of instantly recognisable. With the senior players. And you're with them on a day-to-day basis. You're not actually coaching them, but you work with them. You can see. You see them on the meal times. You see them in the morning when they first come in. You see them before they go, and you've got a relationship with them anyway. And I used to watch the first team train if with a blank day, or if with an afternoon spare, or if the 18s were doing something. So I mean, and I was close to Simon, Snods and Dusty anyway. So I was around about that first team group anyway. So I knew the lads.
So your first match in charge was against Bristol City. Can you remember how you prepared for the match at the time?
Yeah, it was at Ashton Gate actually, and I remember when we set off to the ground, it started snowing. But it was just like a dusting. So unlike modern day pitches, it's very rarely they get snowed off. I mean, if games are called off now, it's because obviously the surrounding roads are dangerous. Pitches they've got under soil eating or what have you. It's very rarely they're called off. But this snow was starting to get stronger and stronger. I'm thinking it's just my luck. Get to manage Leeds, for the first time the game's called off because of snow. But luckily it was only a minor hiccup, and we had a fantastic result. We won 3-0. The lads played ever so well. Bristol played the part on that day. Very nerve wracking because 3-0 sort of it didn't flatter us because we were the better side, but they were definitely in it, Bristol City. But it was just a good feeling because obviously the lads were upbeat because they got a good result. People were disappointed obviously because Simon had left, but it was nice. It was nice for them to get a result and just keep the confidence up.
Absolutely. So as you just said, 3-0 away at Bristol.
Yeah.
First match in charge. You went on and won 2 of your 4 matches as temporary manager. However, Ken Bates, who was the owner at the time, appointed Neil Warnock as a permanent manager shortly after. Was that always a plan, or did you want to spend more time as head coach?
No, I mean, because it happened so quick, and I had no inkling whatsoever that Simon were going. And obviously, I was enjoying what I was doing. The 18s are successful. We were getting some of the younger players were getting good recognition, and I was more concerned with that really. And when the call came, obviously you look after it for them. There's no two ways about that. But in my mind, I was always going to go back to working with the youth team, and so Neil came in, obviously a vastly experienced manager, and he'd got. I think he got a lot of players. He brought a lot of players in that he knew from his time at Sheffield United when they were successful. So obviously that era started then.
Yeah, so when Warnock did come, like you said, he brought a lot of the older generation players like Michael Brown and Michael Tong, that, like you said, play with him under Sheffield United. And that sort of like blocked the path for the younger players that you were helping to bring through the academy. Do you think he should have given a chance to more of the youth players rather than bringing his older players in straight away?
Well, I think to be fair to Neil Warnock, I think what he did was he probably brought players in that he knew, that were, that knew how he played and what he wanted. I don't think it blocked the way for the young players entirely. I think that season Sam Byron made his debut. That was one of them. And obviously Chris Dawson had been around the squad. I think he came off the bench one game. So I think there was some interest there, and I think obviously Neil knew that we've got a decent youth setup, and we've got some good players. And as a youth team coach, you sort of knuckle down, you get on with your work, and and if they ask you about players, you tell them your opinion on players, and then it's up to the manager at the time, whether they put them in or whether they don't put them in. But obviously we've definitely got a lot of these good young players, bubbling underneath the surface of the first team.
Do you think, like, at the time many of them players should have maybe got into the first team but didn't get a chance?
Well, look, football's all about opinion. I mean, and my opinion's strongly linked to youth, and obviously, when I got the job, I put a lot of young players in, and that is how I saw it, and it's about opinion, and it's about. But I see, I was fortunate. I was in a strong position anyway, because obviously I've been at the club a long time, and I knew these young players, and I knew the senior players, and and I knew that we've got a lot of good experienced players for these young players to go in and play with. So, perhaps from that side, I'd got a little bit of an advantage over perhaps managers that came in after or before. So for me it was a no-brainer, because I just saw these young players that were top young players. They were good enough. They were more than ready. And at that time, it was a little bit easier perhaps to put them in.
Neil Warnock only lasted a year, and then you became temporary head coach again for a second time, but just for one match before the appointment of Brian McDermott. But then when McDermott was appointed, you were alongside him as assistant coach as well as coaching the youth setup.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
That is the best time. That was the best they've had that role at Leeds United. I mean, I think they've got it somewhat similar now with Carlos Corberan. Yeah, I mean, he's got one foot in the first team and one foot in the, with the under-23s, and it's good thinking. It's the best that we've had it. When I was there, because you've got a clear link. Then you've got somebody who's working with the first team and with the youth team, and it draws the academy that little bit nearer to the first team. Brian was a brilliant manager. Very underrated. Quite quiet, studious, thought about the game, listened to to his people around him, his staff around him, and he had us up there in the top six at times in his time there, and obviously he was quite keen on young players in youth. I'd played with his assistant Nigel Gibbs at Watford, so he was a former teammate of mine. So I was sort of in good company, and I really enjoyed Brian's reign at Leeds.
So McDermott was sacked in 2014. You returned to your academy role. However, at the time, this was when Massimo Cellino just bought the club, and it was reported that Cellino was to cut funding towards the youth setup in order to basically generate funds. What did that change for you, and how did it affect the youth setup?
Well, I think when you perhaps when you get an overseas owners and how how they view football and how youth football's viewed in Italy, or they've got different ways of doing things. I mean, obviously, from my point of view, we just got on with it. When I got a chance to sort of speak to him, if he asked me about players, I give honest opinion about some of the young players. To be fair to him, he did listen. And it was just trying to get or run the club as near as normal as we can. But there was a lot of change going on, which was going to be unsettling for some people. But we just tried to run it as near as normal that we could. And you know, we knew as an academy staff we've got some really talented young players. You know, talking about people like Lewis Cook and Taylor and Byram and Mowat and Calvin Phillips. You know, who's there now. You know, and it was a really rich purple patch of of top young talent. And to be fair to Cellino, you know, he listened to all that, and he was aware of it, and and it was just a matter of time to try and get him in and around the first team, and that was really my role at the time.
How different was your relationship between Ken Bates and Selenium? Do you think either of them really understood the importance of having a good youth setup?
Yeah, I think they did. I think, to be fair, I think that obviously Bates comes under a lot of criticism from Leeds fans, but my dealings with him, I mean, I didn't have that much dealings with him anyway, in the academy. But when I was caretaker manager and he was a chairman, he was fine with me. Tried to be perhaps as helpful as he could at the time. And I think with Massimo Cellino coming in, I think that he had his idea of how he wanted to do things and what he wanted to happen, and there's definitely a culture thing there. How what's deemed as the right way to do things in Italy is perhaps different in this country, and but I have to say, particularly initially, he listened to what we thought and what we tried to put in place, and to be fair, he didn't try and get in the way of these young players getting into the first team. He was for it. I mean, we brought a lot of players in at the time. Some really talented overseas players as well. People like Mirko Antonucci and good players. Gaetano Berardi, who's still at Leeds now, been a great servant of the club. And and some of these players it was good for them to have that experience. The young players of being with Italian players and overseas players and homegrown players and obviously national players from this country. So it seemed a bit of a toxic mix at the time, but it was actually quite a good experience for some of them.
Yeah, then less than 2 months into Cellino's tenure at the club, you became temporary head coach of the first team for the third time in just 3 years again when you replaced David Hockaday.
Yeah.
How did being a head coach under Cellino differ to being a head coach under Ken Bates, which you'd previously done?
Well, it's like anything else. I mean, the biggest part of management or senior management is being able to manage up, and obviously your relationship that you have with with the guy that's the number one or the owner, if you like. Things have changed now. If you look at Leeds United now, I mean, Andrea is a good owner, and you've got such as Victor Orta, who's the man in between. Marcelo Bielsa and obviously Andrea, and that is probably a better scenario because you've got a football link between the business side of things and the football pitch. And obviously, when I was there, I didn't really have that. So you've got that one-to-one contact with with the owner, if you like. But I mean, he loved his football, I have to say. Massimo Cellino. I mean, he loved talking about his football. Batesy was the same. If he thought he could help, he'd help. To be honest with you, as a caretaker manager, I think they just leave you to it. It's as long as you keep them in the loop with what's happening and and who's injured and what have you. And they just leave you to it. And obviously it's different being a caretaker manager than actually being a manager. Particularly if if you're running the coaching side of things at the club, with the academy, that role's there, and basically you're just looking after things for them.
Yeah, when you did replace Hockaday, were you aware that you were in temporary charge with no view of the job becoming permanent, and that the club were looking for a new manager, or do you think that you might have been able to take it permanently that time?
No, I mean, listen, you just take it on the goodwill that you're looking after it for your employers. I'd really, I was enjoying what I was doing with the academy. I was enjoying working with the kids, getting the kids through. I could see some light at the end of the tunnel for these young players. I mean, it gives you a great feeling of achievement for yourself and all the members of the staff, the academy staff, when you get young players through. It's a great feeling. And I like that side of it. and obviously, you know, I didn't really look past that. You know, that if they come and ask you to look after it, then you look after it for, you know, the foreseeable future. And then, you know, if a new manager comes in, a new manager comes in.
Again, you were replaced this time by Darko Milanic. However, he was sacked 32 days later, which lined you up with the first team job once again.
Yeah.
However, this
Yeah.
time you were appointed as a permanent head coach as opposed to a temporary and given a 1-year contract. What made you decide to accept the permanent job rather than take the part-time?
Well, I think that I think what had happened. Obviously, there'd been a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change at the club. And I think at that time, perhaps, you know, I looked at it and thought that, you know, these young players probably deserved a chance, and probably the best chance for him for me to showcase the academy, and you know, and give them an opportunity to sort of get on and kick on. You know, was just to probably take the role, or be really close to the role and have an influence over the role, you know, with the first team. So, you know, it just seemed a natural thing to do, and I think it was at such a time. I mean, it was a difficult time. Don't get me wrong, because you know, the previous caretaker spell we'd done great. I think we won 3 and drew 1, and it sort of just steered us away from relegation a little bit. And then obviously Darko came in and really didn't have a chance to get his feet under the table, if I'm honest. And then it sort of left us down there. I think we were 4th bottom when I took over, and it was just a case of sort of steadying the ship, and just trying to, you know, steer us away from the foot of the table. And to be fair, you know, we had some hiccups along the way. We had some spells where, you know, we didn't get what we our own way, but by and large, you know, we went on a decent enough run. You know, we had little spells where we went on many runs, and you know, we blooded these young players into the first team, which was key, which was important, because they were good enough. And I think as time's moved on and time's proven that they were good enough, and it just gave everything a chance to settle down while we were getting away from the foot of the table. And obviously from my point of view, and you know, and everybody at the academy's point of view, the most important thing was the football club. You know, and that, you know, we got it on a good footing for whatever happened after.
Absolutely. Were there any requirements set by Cellino when he appointed you as head coach?
No, just get on with it. You know, just do your job. I mean, obviously, you know, there was Nicola Salerno. He was like a technical director, if you like. He recruited. You know, I got on really well with Nicola. You know, he was a really nice old guy, quite bright, knew his stuff. And I just think it was just sort of, you know, trying to get on with it best you can. Like I said, I mean, we were near the foot of the table. So it was trying to get some consistency there. You know, it was important that we did blood these young players in as well, because they were good enough. But again, probably not the best sort of scenario to put young players in if you're near the foot of the table. You want them to have a good experience. But they actually did really, really well for us. And obviously, you know, we sort of managed to settle things down, and you know, we managed to sort of steer it away from where it was. And in the end, I think, looking back on the points per game, I think it was only like 7, 8, 9 points, you know, out of the playoff spots in the end. So, you know, we did all right with what we got.
And then when you took over permanently that season, the squad that you inherited, like you said before, included many new arrivals, but most of them coming from Italy. Do you think them players that have been brought in from the Italian second divisions were good enough to get promoted from the Championship?
Well, I mean, I'd not much knowledge of the Italian leagues, if I'm honest. I mean, obviously, I knew, you know, I knew some of the players that had come in, you know, but I didn't know the level or the standard or what they were up. I mean, the good thing or the beauty of you know, having all these foreign players in, if you like, or Italian players in, is that, you know, it's just to witness how they work, and you know, and their attention to detail, and you know, and the way they look at things. I think there was a lot of things to take from that. You know, and I think, to be honest with you, I think maybe you know, some did well, and some found it tough. I mean, it's a really tough division, the Championship, to sort of, you know, to try and impose yourself on. You know, it's a different culture, like I said. But I think that I think it, you know, in that season in particular, I think that, you know, that definitely quite a few of them contributed. you know, and I think that I think they realised the situation that we were in. I think that you know, obviously there's there's going to be a bedding in period, but I think after after they got bedded in, and I think after they we got used to the routine and what were happening, and there was a little bit of continuity there. I think that was important. Obviously, they'd seen a lot of managers come and go. We managed just to sort of put some results together and get a little bit of momentum. But yeah, I mean, from that point of view, that weren't the problem.
Yeah, and a player that arrived that season but didn't come from Italy was Adrian, who'd come from Brazil.
Yes.
And to fans, that was quite an exciting signing because he'd been linked with some big clubs and named the young Zico and all of this. But his time at Ellen Road didn't really work out, did it? Why do you think that was?
Well, I think he was a young guy. He was a flair player. I think probably at that time, I think we were scrapping for points, and I think his bigger influences were maybe, at times when we started him in games, we thought we could get the best out of him, and at times we fetched him off the bench, and I mean the kid was as good as gold, to be fair. But it was a difficult one to sort of a blood of young flair player, if you like. We're trying to just put a side together that was difficult to beat at the time because we were struggling for points and we needed to try and get away from the foot of the table. But he was such a bright young player, great kid. I think that what would have been nice if things had been settled and we could have had him and maybe a few others younger ones that that come in from overseas. If we could have had them longer and worked with them longer, then we might have got more out of them. But everything was short term, and football's like that. You've got to get results and you've got to perform. But no, I mean, he was a talented boy. He's a bright kid. He's a lovely kid, and sometimes football, you just need the right set of circumstances, and probably for Adrian, it wasn't the right set of circumstances for him.
Yeah. So between your appointment and the start of 2015, Leeds picked up a total of 8 points out of a possible 27. During that time, did you think Cellino was going to lose his patience again with another head coach, because he was definitely known for giving out the axe?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can't worry about things like that. And I think that going back to your experiences when you've had to manage in adversity at places like Halifax and places like that, I think it stands you in good stead. I think that while you always got dialogue there and while you're talking, and I think, to be fair, I think from the position that I inherited, I think he knew it was going to be a difficult job. And to be fair to him, he never put the pressure on me to. He never put pressure on me in such that he didn't know it was going to be anything but a difficult job. So I was just allowed to get on with it, to be honest with you. And I think that there were a lot of things that helped at the time. I think the fact that I played the vast majority of my football as a player at that level, championship level, was a big plus, because I knew the division, I knew the level, and I think it was a big help to everything at the club at the time. So you've got somebody who perhaps vastly experienced at that level. So at that time, probably to get us out of that situation, I was probably the best person to have. And then football moves on. Then you get your club goes on, and your outlooks change. And but at that time, I think it was just a case of trying to knuckle down as a staff, as a club, and just try and get Leeds away from the bottom of the table.
The final match of that 9-game run was a 2-0 loss away at Derby, where Leeds, like you said, were sitting dangerously close to the relegation places, and at the time questions were being raised whether Leeds would go down to League One. Did that match change anything for you at all?
Yeah, I think what we realised, I mean, obviously we played a certain way and we got some results initially with it, and I felt looking, particularly to my caretaker spell, we played a formation that suited us, that suited the majority, particularly the overseas players, and we played this way and we picked results up, and then it sort of had a shelf life. And in the end, you've got to, as a manager, you've got to be proactive, and you've got to be, you've got to be inventive, and you've got to be able to solve the problem. And I think what we did, we changed the shape, we changed the system, changed one or two of the personnel, and we just made ourselves harder to beat. And you know, the Derby game was, you know, was far too open. You know, we'd beaten Derby at home 2-0 in one of the runs, and obviously the 2-0 defeat at Derby was a poor, not only was it a poor performance, but obviously a bad result, and came on the back of one or two defeats. So, you know, we had to change things, and you've got to be proactive as a manager. You've got to be prepared to, you know, you've got to be prepared to change if you don't think it's right. And you know, we changed what we thought would help us, and in the end, it did.
Yeah, because there was just 3 matches between that poor match at Derby, like you said, and a 1-0 win over Bournemouth, who at the time were one of the best teams in the league and top of the table. And the team just seemed, from that game on and after the Derby match, the team just seemed to be playing so much better, and the lineup seemed to change. Like Luke Murphy and Steve Morrison began starting, and there were more youth players. Charlie Taylor started getting some more minutes, and there might have even been a change of formation there as well. What made you make them changes?
Well, I think we had to. You know, I think if the performances are good and your results are a little bit indifferent, but you can see some light at the end of the tunnel, then you can perhaps persevere. But I think what was happening in the recent games, you know, not only were the results poor, but the performances dropped. And I think once you get that, you've got to try and do something to change it, halt it, and make it different, freshen it up. And the changes worked. You know, we went a little bit more authentic, if you like, for that level. You know, it was a 4-2-3-1 formation. Big Stevie Morrison, you know, he played as a lone striker, as a target for us, and did a great job for us as regards holding the ball up and occupying, you know, the opposition. And it gave us a chance to, you know, to still have these young players in, and obviously, you know, the system suited them. We look more solid at the back. We got us experience in front of the back four, and we started to get results with it.
Yeah, and at that period, it wasn't just a change of results as well. They were getting better, but at the time, Massimo Cellino had just been disqualified from the club by the FA. Do you think that had any sort of influence and impact within the team? And
no, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, you know, the only real dealings that the players had with the owner was, you know, was perhaps through me. So, you know, and it'd been all right with me. I mean, I didn't know what was happening as regards him getting banned and things like that. I mean, you know, that's none of my business, you know. And I just, you know, pick the team, get on with it, take the training, you know, report back, you know, find out what's happening, and you know, you just sort of kick on. And I think, to be fair, I think it was, you know, it was the right decision to change things at the time. It needed change, it needed freshening up. We needed to be a little bit more resilient as a team. You know, we still wanted to sort of keep that flair that we'd got, and try and create a score, but we were a better side for it, and we became harder to beat.
yeah, definitely. And in that month in January as well, you brought in 3 new additions with Saul Bamba, who we had on last week of the podcast actually,
Yeah.
and Grandi Ndoye and Edgar Chani. At the time, how did the transfer policy work at the club? Like, for example, did you suggest that the club should buy these players over there brought to you?
Well, we needed a big centre back, you know, which was important. You know, we needed somebody who knew the level. And obviously, you know, me and Tomo got his heads together, and we knew Saul was out there, Saul Bamba. So, you know, he was one that we wanted to bring in, which got ratified, put through. I mean, obviously, you know, Gandhi and Goy and Edgar Chani, you know, they were Nicholas, you know, signings, which is fair enough. You know, that's how the system worked at the time. You know, you've got a recruiter, and we did need some more firepower up front. I mean, at that time, I think we'd only Stevie Morrison and Mirko Antonucci as strikers as such. So we did need another striker, and obviously Gandhi was somebody that Nicola had seen that thought might help us with the physical presence in midfield. But we've got people like Rudy Austin and that as well who are doing all right. But so yeah, I mean, you know, them were the 3 that came in. I think if I'm honest, I think Saul did a good job for us. You know, definitely he galvanised the changing room. Such a good character, such a strong character, and you know, I thought his performances helped. You know, towards the running towards the end of the season as well.
So in the last episode, Bamba spoke very highly of you. He said that you asked him to sort out the dressing room. How do you think Sol did at sorting out the club?
I thought it was brilliant. You know, we knew he was a big presence. We knew he was a good guy. You know, he gave us experience and physical presence and athleticism at the back, which we probably needed. I think he helped Coops at the time, and I think it was a good signing for us. And you know, as regards the dressing room, I think what you got to remember with football clubs is that everybody sees footballers and they judge footballers on the football merit, but there's people in there as well, and everybody's different. And particularly when you've got a mixed dressing room, if you like, of homegrown players and home players from this country and then players from overseas. So he was the perfect type to come in and just help us on that front as well, and he was excellent.
And Goy and Channy didn't have much impact at the club, but Bamba's arrival seemed to turn Leeds' results around. Like, they won 7 of his first 11 matches whilst being at the club and just lost 3 times.
Yeah.
Do you think he was an important addition on the pitch as well as off the pitch in the dressing room, like you said?
Oh, massive. Yeah, massive. And I mean, you look since he left Leeds, he went to go on and play in the Premier League with Cardiff. So he's a player that's got ability, and like you say, he's got real leadership qualities. And he's a calming influence in the dressing room. He's a voice of reason. It was good for me and Tomo at the time because we got that link then, which we had as well through Coops and people like that. I think for Liam Cooper, I think he was a good foil, and I think he helped Coops. I look at Coops now, and he's a really top performer. And sometimes having players having the experience of having experienced players alongside you in your journey, it just helps. And I'm sure Coops will vouch for that. So I mean, he was good for us, and it not only was he a good player and a player that we needed at the time, that type of player, he was a good person, and that was the most important thing.
Another player who was one of Leeds' more important players that season was Mirko Antonucci, who arrived at the beginning of that season. He was the club's top goal scorer as well. However, it was reported that if he reached 12 goals in a single season, he would receive an extra 1 year on his contract. Was that true?
Well, I mean, obviously that was in his contract. I mean, for me, I just I thought he was a great player, Mirko Antonucci. I thought he got a lot of ability, and some of the stuff he used to do in training was fantastic. And a player that could score goals, and at that time he was probably one of our main goal threats. So you're going to want to keep playing him. And keep him involved. I mean, he was a good kid. He used to work hard in training. His attitude was always good, I have to say. And it was important to us. So he was a player that was important that we kept out there on the pitch.
Yeah, and of course, Antonucci went on to score 11 goals that season, 1 goal below his clause in his contract. Was there a reason why, when he did reach to 11, he wasn't featuring as frequently? Or was that just a coincidence?
No. I mean, that's just how football is. I think that you pick sides as you pick them. For certain games. And I think that I think, to be fair to Mirko, I thought he was he's a good player for the club. I thought he was an exciting player. I thought he scored goals. And I think that it's like anything else with players. They have good spells in the season. They have spells where they need to come out, and so that wasn't a problem.
Unfortunately, at this point, Neil had to leave us because of other commitments that he'd made, so we weren't able to complete the rest of the questions, and we weren't able to ask him about the sick note 6 at Charlton, which he was in charge for, obviously, and his departure from the club.
That ends this week's episode. Thanks to Neil for his time, and sorry we couldn't read out the submitted questions and finish the episode properly. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next guest, but who will it be? Stay tuned for the upcoming vote on our LUFC Fanzone Instagram story later this week to have your say. Thanks for listening.